What if I told you that you already have everything you need to be a screenwriter? Let's hear it from three of my favorite animation storytellers, Phil Lord, Peter Ramsey, and Jorge Gutierrez during our Write for Animation panel at Lightbox Expo.
I always say these movies are made with our brains, but we watch them with our bodies. And so the more frequently you can find a way to activate your body and like listen to how it responds to a story. We all have an innate story sense as human beings, as like Homo sapiens. It's the thing that made us get this far as a species, because it was like, hey Peter, you know that cliff over there? Yeah, Bill, I got too close to the edge, he fell over. It's a terrible story. That's like the survival technology that got us here.
Right.
So we have that, and we need to be able to tell the story to one another. And I have writer's block. Like a buddy of mine told me, he's like, oh, you have writer's block? You're not talking to enough people. It was during the pandemic.
Oh,
he was like, go to the beach, like talk to a friend, pitch them out the story. You have to activate your mirror neurons, right? The sensitive part of your body that's checking in with somebody else about what they think of what I'm saying and if it's landing and how they're experiencing that. So like filmmaking is a team sport, but so is writing. It is really a group experience. And I haven't met a person who's got such a strong innate story sense that they just like spit it out.
You know, it's so funny you bring this up. This is one of my favorite things is asking people how they met, couples, or asking people like about their first fight or first time they did something. Because you are getting to hear a story that's been told hundreds, if not thousands of times. And so this story has been edited and rewritten and maximized. All the fat has been trimmed out. All the great moments have been emphasized. And so ask your grandparents, ask your parents, literally the first time you did this, or I always ask my dad like, hey, before you met my mom, what was the worst, experience you had with a lady? And hearing his version of that, and then asking my mom the same thing, like you get these incredible stories. And now it's my turn, right? When I get asked like, how did you meet Sandra? I have that story down. Depending on the group, I'm like, I have the 5-minute version. I have the director's cut, 7 minutes. I have the X-rated version for when I'm super drunk. And all these stories, you've told them over and over and over. And so what you're saying is, how do we take that and apply it to the craft? And it's just time and iteration.
And
right?
one of the things that has been a little bit adrift, when we started Cloudy, you pitched your storyboard. Like, you pitched it with a stick and you performed it. And in so doing, you learned about that sequence. And watching someone perform it, just rehearsing it, it got better. And Chris and I had to pitch Cloudy a million times. And we still try to develop a pitch for a movie even now because you ingest it in a different way. And that's really critical, that even though a lot of times like we're tapping through sequences over Zoom now, make sure that we're performing those stories. When you are clicking through something, like you've rehearsed it, it's directed.
And I think it's also something that tells about the structure. Sometimes I believe that we get so confused by these screenwriting books that teach you screenwriting by the numbers. When you hear a friend telling a story, how they met, or if you analyze that through structure, you see that's the perfect structure of movie. It's the human structure. I think that it's very interesting to see how it's not about Hollywood, not even Aristotle. It's really how we are meant to experience life. And I'd love to hear about your process in structure, because I find it useful, but I think it's also misunderstood sometimes.
I think a lot of the stuff that gets over mystified about writing is the idea that you have to know all that stuff in advance. You can end up with something that has an exquisite structure, but that's just because you cut away all this clutter and it started asserting itself. Phil always used to say, the movie tells you what it wants to be. You just have to listen to it. It's the same with a piece of writing, whether it's a short or a feature or whatever. If you're aware and sort of attuned to what you're doing, you can let go, or at least try to let go of too many preconceived notions. The movie will start talking to you.
Like try to break down, why do I love this? And that happened to me early on when I was deciphering like, why did Amores Perros, why did these Mexican movies leave Mexico? And all these other movies didn't leave Mexico. And why did Amelie leave France? And why did Seven Samurai leave Japan and was a worldwide phenomenon? And basically what I deduced, which is super obvious, was that these filmmakers and these storytellers were from these really specific countries, but their movies were universal in their themes. So the movies weren't about the culture and they weren't about the country. They were about universal themes of characters. Seven Samurai, dying class of warriors who defends ungrateful and some grateful farmers from bandits. That could take place in the Mexican Revolution, that could take place any era. Amelie, weirdo girl who gets joy from bringing people together and in the end is rewarded with love. That could take place in Pasadena, that could take place anywhere. Once you start breaking that down and you realize the culture is the canvas and the story painted on top is universal, I became obsessed with Reservation Dogs. And my favorite thing about Reservation Dogs, anybody who hasn't seen it, it's incredible. But you felt privileged to be in this culture that I knew nothing about. So I felt like I got invited to someone's party. And as I looked at this beautiful, gorgeous painting of this culture that has been around me, but I was not aware of, the closer I looked at this painting, the more I realized, oh, it's a mirror of the human experience. And it's stories about fathers and sons and friends and people dying and how they react to it. And all those things are universal. So I think for a lot of us coming from other countries where we go, how do I tell the story of where I'm from in a way where everybody can get it? That's how you do it. You make it universal. You make the themes universal. And, Spider-Verse to me was the perfect example of that, where even people who could give a shit about Spider-Man felt father, son, mother, dynamic, kid growing up, empathy to mentors, to people outside of his comfort, coming from literally different dimensions to teaching things. And that is the universal part of that movie. My mom saw it and she loved it. And she doesn't know what Spider-Man is.
Now it's time to turn your passion into a superpower in your animation career. Explore our channel for all the resources you need. Start by watching this video where these animation legends reveal essential storytelling mistakes that you should totally avoid. I'm Pietro, this is Write for Animation, and I'll see you in the next video.